threat was. There were a lot of references to the 47 years of Iran being a problem. That is not imminent. That is in the past.
This administration has no plan for the day after. They've stumbled into this. They are trying to destroy the Iranian regime, and they have no plan for what comes next.
If you fail to plan, you plan to fail. There's no plans. What happens afterwards? There's no plans.
But Republican Congresswoman Nicole Maliotakis doesn't see it that way.
Look, we are working all together to do something here that is critical. The idea is to eliminate the immediate threat. We have Hamas, we have Hezbollah, we have the Houthis. They are all trying and have killed Americans. They've hurt our allies, and they are very disruptive in not only the region, but the entire world. That is the plan, to eliminate that threat.
While freedom-loving people around the world are celebrating the death of Iranian despot Ali Khamenei, mosques full of Muslims in one American city are mourning him and calling him a martyr.
Ayatollah Ali Khamenei had been presiding over 37 years of death, despair, and misery in Iran when he was dispatched to the afterlife by IDF bombs. Most recently, he oversaw the massacre of up to 30,000 protesters in the streets of Tehran, as reported by NBC News.
Cries of grief and the seemingly endless rows of bodies, hinting at the scale of the bloodshed.
While most Iranians celebrated, Muslims in Dearborn, Michigan were gathering to eulogize Khamenei as a hero and a martyr.
We're gathered here today to commemorate the martyrdom of the great leader of our time, Sayyid Ali al-Hussein al-Khamenei.
Multiple clerics in Dearborn called on their congregations to honor the religious dictator.
We ask Allah to accept this sacrifice, and I offer my condolences to each and every one of you, and I also offer my congratulations on this ultimate honor that he received after 86 years of jihad in the way of Allah.
Dearborn has been at the center of a battle for the future of religious freedom as Muslims look to spread radical Islam and Sharia law as far and wide as possible here in the U.S. And they've got the next generation in tow.
Then I appreciate our sisters, especially those sisters who brought small children so that our children would grow up with this culture where we remember our martyrs and we're not ashamed of them.
I'm Steve Jordahl.
Texas State Representative James Tallarico winning his state's Democratic Senate primary election on Tuesday. Tallarico defeated radical left-wing Texas Congresswoman Jasmine Crockett with 53% of the vote.
We launched this underdog campaign 6 months ago in my hometown of Round Rock, Texas. And since then, tens of thousands of Texans have shown up to rally with us in every corner of the state.
For American Family News, I'm Steve Pugh.
As we watch world events unfold and fulfill Scripture, it's hard to believe anyone could doubt God and His Word are real. And yet there are so many who either question or completely refuse to believe it. The God Who Speaks is a 90-minute documentary that hits the doubt head-on with evidence that proves God is real and His Word is the ultimate authority. Watch it anytime and invite others to watch with you. Just visit stream.afa.net. That's stream.afa.net.
Jenna Ellis in the morning on American Family Radio.
I love talking about the things of God because of truth and the biblical worldview. The U.S. Constitution obligates our government to preserve and protect the rights that our founders recognize come from God, our Creator, not our government. I believe that Scripture in the Bible is very clear that God is the one that raised up each of you, and God has allowed us to be brought here to this specific moment in time.
This is Jenna Ellis in the morning.
Good morning. It is Wednesday, March 4th, and the U.S. Supreme Court has delivered a historic, groundbreaking victory for parental rights, dismantling California's secret gender transition regime. This is the headline coming from a press release from the Thomas More Society. You'll remember that that organization is also the group of attorneys that represented Pastor John MacArthur and Grace Community Church, does excellent pro bono work. And in fact, two of my co-counsel who were on that same case with Grace Community Church were counsel on this case as well. Paul Jana and Jeffrey Trissel, really great attorney, special counsel for the Thomas More Society. And This is historic because it held that a secret gender transition policy in schools violate the religious liberty and due process rights of parents. So the ruling restores the class action injunction that the Thomas More Society had secured against the state of California for parents across the state who object to the state's directives requiring schools to conceal children's gender transitions from their own parents, and facilitating those transitions without parental knowledge or consent, and compel teachers to actively deceive families. So the landmark 6-3 decision, according to TMS, is the most significant parental rights ruling in a generation. And so let's welcome in Cory DeAngelis, who is now a fellow with the Heritage Foundation. Congratulations on that. Wears so many other hats. Also is a contributor to a variety of publications. And Cory, you had posted a thread about this, and this just seems so obvious that at least 6 of the justices agree that California schools and teachers shouldn't be keeping secrets from parents. But I think it's actually remarkable that 3 of the justices on the U.S. Supreme Court actually sided with the state of California. I mean, that to me is just as big of a headline.
Right, that's exactly right. It should have been a unanimous decision, but you have the 3 usual suspects. One of them doesn't know what a woman is, ruled on the wrong side of history here and against parental rights. And the initial federal court judge, Roger Benitez, got it right back in December 2025 when he said policies like this that keep parents in the dark create what he called a trifecta of harm. Obviously, it hurts the parents because they're kept in the dark, and it infringes on their right to directly direct the upbringing of their children. They won't be able to make their educational decisions or mental health decisions without all of this knowledge. But then it goes further than that. It infringes on the First Amendment rights of the teachers, who might need to keep quiet and not tell the parents if they do want to tell the parents. And that could have implications for their religious liberties as well if they don't buy into the transgender insanity and going by the students' preferred pronouns. But then it also hurts the kids themselves, right? Because if they're at a very young age, they're impressionable. They don't really know what's going on yet. They are confused, and maybe they're a tomboy. It's a girl that thinks she's a boy at the time, and then you have the heavy hand of the state putting their thumb on the scale to try to tip the scales in favor of this transgender ideology. And what if that kid goes and gets a surgery or takes irreversible puberty blockers? Well, this is obviously going to hurt the child in the long term as well. There was just a case out of New York that awarded $2 million in damages to a now 22-year-old woman who was 16 at the time, who was pressured into transitioning from her psychologist and the surgeon obviously did the surgery. Those people were both held liable. You might say $2 million is just a start, but this was also in New York, and some organizations are backing off medical associations and now saying, well, maybe we should wait until at least 19 years old to even think about encouraging stuff like this, where it can have irreversible damaging effects on young children. So I will just say that, yes, it shouldn't have been a 6-3. It should have been a 9-0 decision. And parents need to be vigilant, because just because the Supreme Court ruled on our side for now doesn't mean that that the teachers in all cases are not going to keep secrets from parents. So you still need to be actively engaged with your kids, ask them what's going on, keep a watchful eye on the government school system, because there's going to be rogue actors that are still going to try to push this insanity on children.
Yeah, so well said. I mean, while this is an historic victory, this is, and I think the tide is turning clearly. You mentioned that New York case, that even in New York, it's only $2 million, but at the same time, coming from New York, that's very significant. And yet we still absolutely need to be eternally vigilant, because these 3 justices, and then obviously the Ninth Circuit that attempted initially to dismantle the class certification and saying basically that parents don't have standing. And thankfully, the U.S. Supreme Court said, no, we reject that analysis. The fact that the Supreme Court is is at least at this moment in time stepping in for logic and reason, doesn't mean that everybody else in the country is suddenly following suit. I mean, we still have judges in California. We still have legislators in California. We still have teachers in California that are making these kinds of decisions and thinking that it's okay to gender transition minors. And that just is mind-boggling to me, Cory, that even under, any sort of rational analysis or objective concern for children, that this type of thing is in their view defensible at all.
Yeah, first, do no harm. And I will say in other Supreme Court cases that have had to do with parental rights and school choice even, there's been this ping pong going back and forth where we win at the Supreme Court and then, you'll have an activist judge in one of the states say, oh, well, we're doing it a little differently. And they try to split hairs, and it's really frustrating. For example, in Montana, we had a case go to the Supreme Court because they were excluding religious schools from their private school choice program. It was an obvious they were obviously violating the rights of religious families and schools out there by excluding those schools. Well, the Supreme Court said, okay, you don't have to have a school choice program, but if you do, you can't exclude the religious ones. Well, then you went over to Maine, and Maine said, well, we're in our program, we're not excluding religious schools for being religious. We're excluding them for doing religious things, which is, a distinction without a difference. And then this past year, we had a victory at the Supreme Court in the Mahmoud v. Taylor decision, which allowed parents to opt their children out of gender ideology instruction. Huge win out of Montgomery County, Maryland. Well, then we just found out a few weeks ago that there was a court in, I believe, Massachusetts where they said, oh, well, this parent wanted to opt out for his kindergarten kid with this gender stuff. But, our lesson wasn't gender ideology. This was gender identity. So it's a little bit different than what they ruled on at the Supreme Court. So that parent basically has to have their kids subjected to this gender insanity in kindergarten because the courts are playing games. But at the end of the day, I think you're right that it's good news that the Supreme Court's at least weighing in on these issues and laying down the law. But it does concern me that we do have 3 judges who, just imagine if they were in the majority. You'd have our religious liberties trampled on, you'd have parental rights trampled on, and so on and so forth, where they just toe the party line instead of reading the Constitution.
Yeah, and this is where I'm very concerned for the future of the U.S. Supreme Court. I mean, obviously, people have been saying from Trump's first term, at least, his most lasting legacy will be the 3 justices that he put on the Supreme Court. I think maybe, 2.5. The Amy Coney Barrett is a little bit split. She got it right on this one, and, I think on some of these very obvious ones, but I wouldn't necessarily put her as a solid win. But at least, that it solidified a few justices that are younger. But moving forward, I mean, President Trump has, only 3 more years in office, a little under, and we're looking at the potential aging out of Justices Alito and Thomas in the short term. And there's been some talk, Cory, about, I mean, they're both, in my opinion, the most conservative justices. And, do they wait and see, who's elected in 2028, or is this potentially a Ruth Bader Ginsburg situation, or do they retire? And then who might President Trump pick? Hopefully someone that's better than Kavanaugh and Amy Coney Barrett. But that's the analysis. I mean, it's really difficult when you kind of have to choose your oligarchs. Yeah,
Ted Cruz. I just don't want to lose a senator from my home state of Texas who's doing a good job. But yeah.
Hey, Ron DeSantis is term limited. I think he'd be great, but
Yeah. Well, yeah, I think that's a good pick too. He can pick 2 people. Yeah. So, I think that would be a good idea because you're right. We want that legacy to have a much longer time on the Supreme Court. Yes, Justice Thomas is great, but you got to think about the reality of the situation too. So at the end of the day, with all of these court cases going back and forth, I think this is also a good time to remind everybody why school choice is important as well, because because the school districts are going to continue to play games and parents need to keep a watchful eye. Parents should continue to do that, but they should also have the ability to take their money to a school that's aligned with their values, that's not trying to play games, that doesn't try to secretly transition their kids behind their back. And I'm not saying that all the private schools get it right either, but at least the parents will have an escape valve and then give the school districts a reason to listen to them if they go complain. And instead of cutting off their mic and calling them domestic terrorists, at least the parents would have some leverage in the situation if they could take their money somewhere else.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and you raised such a great point, Cory, that this is why the legislative opportunities in the states really matter. Because if you didn't have some of this insane nonsense coming from states like California, we wouldn't need the U.S. Supreme Court to intervene to begin with. I mean, the fact that you have states like California and especially Colorado, I mean, it seems like those two states most recently have had the most, wild and absurd leftist nonsense come out of those states that go up to the Supreme Court that have to be struck down. But if we had better overall legislators across the country in these states, then we wouldn't have these cases of origin to begin with. And so that's why, what you're advocating for, what a lot of conservatives are advocating for, to not just defend the insanity, but to actually go on the offensive and pass really good legislation that protect parental rights, school choice and education, all of these things. That's incredibly important as well.
That's exactly right. And in Colorado, they had a bill that labeled misgendering your child as child abuse. You could actually lose your kids if you don't buy into delusions of a 3-year-old who wants to wear a dress if he's a boy, for example. It's just that ultimately got ripped out of the bill, but that just goes to show you the direction that they're trying to go in some of these states. And I will say, just because you're in a red state doesn't mean everything's okay. There's undercover videos coming out of school districts where they're saying they're still doing critical race theory, just calling it something else. They're still doing the gender stuff, but they just try to hide behind closed doors. So parents, you can't just say, oh, everything's fine and dandy because I live in Texas or Florida. There's still issues going on in those states as well. And I just saw in South Dakota yesterday, their House, after it passed the Senate already, their House killed a parental Bill of Rights. Half of the Republicans voted with all the Democrats to kill a parental Bill of Rights in South Dakota, which, sometimes in these deep red states, Democrats will run as Republicans. So you got to be careful there, too.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, Cory DeAngelis, we got to leave it there. So much more to discuss. We'll have to have you on again soon on all of these issues. But, it is important, even if you are in a red state, to remain vigilant, and especially if you have children in the state-funded school system, because you never know what's going on, and you should know what's going on and continue to be informed and ensure that that the teachers and especially the teachers' unions aren't coming between you and your child. I mean, that's one of the things that this case reaffirmed, which is excellent, is that substantive due process that's a landmark precedent for parental rights nationwide, and that parents, not the state, hold the primary authority over the care, upbringing, and education of children, including the right not to be shut out of participation in decisions regarding their children's mental health. So good job again, Thomas More Society. Follow Cory DeAngelis on X, and we will be right back with more.
I'm Riley Wildman. I'm the director of the AFA Foundation, and there's several tools that we have that you can give. There is a charitable gift annuity that we offer is one of our tools. There's a bequest as well as stock, and I'll kind of give you a brief overview for you of what each one of them does. The charitable gift annuity is just a simple contract between you and American Family Association where you leave income coming back to you for the rest of your life. The bequest is just a simple gift to American Family Association that people give and leave us in their will. And then also a stock. The stock is just an outright gift to American Family Association. You receive a full tax deduction. And if you want to know more, please visit afafoundation.net or give us a call at 800-326-4543, extension 345. We would love to speak with you very soon.
They're coming for your family. Not with guns, not with armies, but with laws, with lawsuits, with ballots and bureaucrats. Parental rights are under attack. Marriage is being redefined. Your values, they want them silenced, and they're counting on you to do nothing. But here's the thing, we're not backing down. I'm Walker Wildman, and AFA Action is in the fight, in the legislature, in the courtroom, and at the ballot box. We're stopping bad legislation, we're challenging activist judges, and through iVoter Guide, we're helping Christians vote like it matters, because it does. Thousands of families are already standing with us, and I believe the American family is still worth fighting for. But we can't do it without you, and we need your help today. Visit afaaction.net right now. Give today. Join us on the front lines, because the other side isn't slowing down, and neither can we. afaaction.net. Your voice, your values, your vote.
Hello, Americans. I'm Todd Starnes. Stand by for news and commentary next. The baseball team at Northport High School in Sarasota, Florida, facing the wrath of atheists. The baseball team has a chaplain affiliated with the Fellowship of Christian Athletes. Well, the other day, the local chapter posted a message on Facebook saying they were praying over every coach and player. Well, that outraged the Freedom from Religion Foundation, a Wisconsin-based group of atheist predators. They target towns and communities on a mission to remove Christianity from the public marketplace. Now, the atheists say it's unconstitutional for athletic programs to let an adult serve as a chaplain, and they're calling on the district to investigate and ban the FCA. Let's hope the school district has an attorney who understands religious liberty, because there's nothing unconstitutional about a high school baseball team having a chaplain. This time, the atheist struck out. I'm Todd Starnes.
They say when life hands you lemons, make lemonade. But what do you do when it feels like life is throwing the lemons at you full force? That's kind of a funny way to think of it, but there are times when there's so much going on in the world and it's happening so fast, you don't know where to go for answers or for encouragement. The solution for that is simple: American Family Radio. You'll find out what's happening and why, what you can do to take action, and it's all from a biblical perspective. What better way to find hope in the middle of a bombardment of lemons? Over the air or with the app on your phone, tablet, Roku TV, or smart speaker, you have AFR at your fingertips pretty much anywhere. And with the podcasts of each program, you can catch up on anything you missed or listen to it again. If you're new or if you've been with us a long time, visit us today. Stop by afr.net. afr.net.
Welcome back to Jenna Ellis in the Morning on American Family Radio.
Welcome back, and what a night across the country last night with some of the GOP primaries, especially including the state of Texas. So Ken Paxton is forcing John Cornyn into a runoff for the Republican Senate primary, and James Tallarico on the Democrat side soundly defeated Jasmine Crockett. And Dan Crenshaw actually lost his primary, which was a huge upset. So a number of things going on in the state of Texas. Let's welcome in Abraham George, who is the chairman of the Texas GOP. And Abe, you know, what a wild night for Texas.
Yeah, thank you, Jenna. We expected some of this. Some of this we didn't. With this, a lot of the endorsements didn't mean much anymore, things like that. The people are doing their research, which is a great thing for Texas. So, we expected some of these people to win, and not all of them. So it's a different day in Texas, that's for sure. And we got a bunch of runoffs.
So let's talk first about Cornyn versus Paxton. How exactly did this land out? And this is going to be upcoming in just a couple of months. This runoff, and so where are those two positioned?
Well, Ken Paxton is sitting Attorney General. Even last night, he was filing lawsuits on behalf of the people, which is in favor of the Republican Party here in Texas. Democrats, Dallas County Democrat Party decided they're going to go to court and get an extension for 2 more hours of polling to be open for 2 more hours. and Ken went to Supreme Court and got that shut down. So, while he was getting ready for his watch party, he was doing that. So, and we have John Cornyn, who's been there for about actually this will be his 5th term if he wins. So President Trump did not endorse in this race. Wesley Hunt was another candidate. So forcing a sitting senior senator to for a runoff in Texas is unheard of. But last time that happened was when Ted Cruz ran, and this is going to be an interesting one. I think Ken has a really good momentum. A lot of this will come down to who would be supported by the president. And the runoffs is a different type of people who's going to show up to the polling location, right? I mean, it's not your average primary voter. These are further right most of the time, and people who know what they're doing. So it's a whole different battle for them from now to the runoff day.
Yeah, and that's a really good point. That primaries don't have as much turnout as the general, obviously, but then in a runoff, I mean, that's asking the Republicans to come back to the polls and vote basically again. And so, what do you anticipate as the chair of the Texas GOP? What do you anticipate in terms of the get out and vote momentum, just to make sure that Texas Republicans have their say in something that as you mentioned is such a historic event like this runoff?
Right. So we expected about 5 or 6 runoff elections, like AG's race, which is in a runoff. We also expected the comptroller's race. We expected the agricultural commissioner's race, but those 2 races are not in the runoff anymore. So there's a lot less money coming in for just on TV ads and things like that. So what we are going to focus on to get as many people to the polls as possible. We're going to have a campaign for that. Obviously, the party does not take a position on one way or the other. Individual officers of the party are allowed to endorse and get behind candidates, but the party itself, the apparatus, does not get involved in the basis itself. So we're going to see. I mean, John Cornyn's campaign spent about $100 million in this primary so far, and I was told by Ken Paxton's campaign yesterday they spent $500,000. So they've been saving their money for the runoff, and Cornyn is one of the guys who can raise money. So it's going to be a battle of how many TV ads are we going to see and how many mailers and all that good stuff.
Wow.
The main goal will be to get as many people to the polls as possible.
Yeah. And and I think it's so fascinating, to see how the difference between, what traditional campaigning still looks like, in 2026, like TV ads and mailers you mentioned, versus social media. And it seems like, kind of turning to the Democrat side, James Tallarico really rose in popularity and also just name ID through a lot of social media and interviews. I mean, and, in my opinion, of course, I think that his name ID rose in a bad way, in the sense that literally everything that he says is just remarkably stupid, and somebody that clearly you don't want to be representing the state of Texas or any state in the U.S. Senate. I mean, he's literally, my friend Greg Price posted a clip where he's literally suggesting that God is non-binary. I mean, the guy professes to have faith, and then has a very odd definition of whatever his faith is. It's definitely not biblical, but it goes to the point that, some of this more traditional campaigning absolutely still works. There's a ton of money that goes into it, but then some of these newer ways, and maybe the non-traditional ways of social media, are on the rise, regardless of who wins the Republican nomination. Kind of fast forwarding to the general, how would either a Paxton or Cornyn sort of offset that with someone now like James Tallarico?
Well, I think the messaging from the Republican Party will be when a seminarian goes and tells everyone that God is non-binary, which I still haven't figured out what that means.
I don't think anybody knows. Yeah.
I don't think anybody does. So I think that's the messaging. That's not Texas at all. I mean, even Democrats in Texas are God-fearing, Bible-believing, church-going people. I mean, they disagree with the Republicans on certain issues, but most the old guard Democrats don't believe what James is selling. So last time, if you looked at it, Ted Cruz versus Colin Allred, the campaign was primarily about gender transitioning of your children. That's what Colin Allred wanted, and that's what James Tallarico wants. He is a Texas House representative who either he has two things. Either he says, God didn't tell you to, deport illegals, or we don't want voters and all of that stuff. That's one thing. The other time, anytime we talk about election integrity or stopping China and Russia from buying up Texas land, he calls us racist. And that's pretty much the only two messaging they have. And I don't think Texans are buying that anymore. We flipped 12 new Democrat counties in 2024 cycle, mainly because their message, they just don't have anything to sell. People are not buying their narrative anymore. So this is going to be an interesting race, but we're going to have to spend a lot of money. I was told we're going to have more than $1 billion spent on Texas this cycle by Democrats, and we're going to have to raise a lot of money. But I think we can do it. I don't think Texas is going blue, even with all the money that's spent by establishment in Texas. All of these runoffs are happening. So I don't even think we're worried about the Democrat side, but again, it's going to be a battle, that's for sure.
Yeah, and that is really wild to see just how much money goes into this, and and this is a one state, and I'm speaking with Abraham George, who is the chairman of the Texas GOP, and it's just a reminder, I think, to everyone listening across the country that all of these races matter, all of these primaries matter, and putting up the best candidate on the Republican side, the best conservative, really matters, and then fast forwarding to the general election. Making sure that, we can back the most conservative candidate. I hope that you're right, that people in the state of Texas aren't buying, what the left is trying to sell. I think that largely right now, those kinds of messages aren't resonating with Americans. And, in just the last minute or so I have with you here, Abraham George, what do you think is going to be, the biggest issue in Texas, kind of heading into the general?
Well, there's a huge issue in Texas that hasn't been properly managed yet, and then we need to worry about it, and that is property tax. If someone purchased a home 15 years ago for $100,000, it's valued at about $600 now, and the property tax just went up so much. So the local issue, the state issue, is going to be property tax, and that's it. That's going to be the biggest issue we're going to have to face. Then we have a few others. Water, it's all mostly like not social issues, but then you look at the abortion pills coming into Texas. You look at, the Planned Parenthood have offices all over Texas, even though it's illegal to have an abortion. So they're counseling people. So all of those things will be on the ballot. It will be securing your children's future. It will be securing your financial future. That's what it's going to be. That's going to be. I think that's going to be the messaging from our side. Then one other major issue we see is the Sharia issue. There's a Islamification of Texas. It's happening. So that's another one. Yeah. So there are a few major issues.
All of those are major, definitely major issues. Well, Abraham George, really appreciate your insights this morning, and make sure to listeners in Texas that you are getting out and voting in that runoff election, making your voices heard, and so many important things going on across the country. We will be right back with more.
to sharpen the biblical worldview of Christians and to share the good news of Jesus Christ. That is the mission of the Christian Worldview radio program. I'm host David Wheaton, inviting you to join us this Saturday morning at 9 Eastern, 8 Central, as we discuss all matters of life and faith from a decidedly biblical perspective. The Christian Worldview, Saturday mornings at 9 Eastern, 8 Central, right here on American Family Radio.
The Awakening with Bishop E.W. Jackson.
We have not been made the greatest nation in the history of mankind by denigrating God. We have become the greatest nation on earth because we are a nation that acknowledged Almighty God to be the source of our values, our rights, our liberties, and that therefore we are accountable to Him.
The Awakening on the podcast page at afr.net.
For you formed my inward parts. You knitted me together in my mother's womb. My name is Abraham Hamilton III, and this is the Hamilton Minute. According to a recent study published by the Christian Post, 76.3% of all abortions are obtained by, quote, God-fearing women, unquote, with 68.7% who identified themselves as Christian women and 18% of all abortions obtained by self-described born-again or evangelical women. A corresponding CareNet study found that many women with unplanned pregnancies go silently from the church pew to the abortion clinic, convinced the church would gossip rather than help. America's greatest need is repentance. When the hearts of the American people turn to God, everything else will be impacted.
Listen each weekday from 5 to 6 p.m. Central for the Hamilton Corner with Abraham Hamilton III, public policy analyst for the American Family Association.
Here's some great news. If you missed the deadline to sign up for health insurance, or more importantly, if you're just not happy with what you've got, you still have a choice. It's called MediShare, and it's proven for more than 30 years it is proven. And we know this from member surveys. People love it, which is why it's grown to hundreds of thousands of members across the country. One big factor, besides the peace of mind that comes from being a MediShare member, the savings is tremendous. It is not atypical for a family of four switching to MediShare to save more than $8,000 a year. It is a difference maker, and you can get 24/7 telehealth. You get access to more than 1 million providers and hospitals. There are flexible options, too, for your budget. So if you think you're stuck with a high-cost plan that doesn't have much to offer, think again. You could join MediShare anytime, so call them today and check it out. There's no pressure. They're super easy to talk to. Here's the number. 833-44-BIBLE. That's 833-44-BIBLE. 833-44-BIBLE.
Welcome back to Jenna Ellis in the Morning on American Family Radio.
Welcome back. And the so-called Iran war, which is the mainstream media's headline, is still ongoing, and I would just call this a strategic strike with ongoing conflict, but it really should not be characterized as a war. We've been talking about that all week, and that's really more the Democrats' messaging just to suggest that President Trump didn't have constitutional authority to strike Iran when he has said that he believed that an imminent strike was forthcoming from Iran, and so did not allow that to occur first. And it's been absolutely wild seeing some of the social media posts where even some Americans are suggesting, and of course, they're the ones on the left, suggesting, well, we should have just let Iran strike first and then we would have been justified. Yeah, that doesn't sound like a good idea to me. But coming from allisraelnews.com, the live updates here are Israel is under simultaneous fire from Iran and Hezbollah. The IDF has ordered evacuation of the entire southern Lebanon, and CENTCOM says operations are ahead of schedule. So a lot more headlines as well from allisrael.com. So let's welcome in the editor-in-chief, Joel Rosenberg, who's also host of the Rosenberg Report. And Joel, are you in Israel right now?
I'm not, Jenna. I'm actually here in Washington. The airports are closed. We cannot get back. So we are having meetings. I had a good meeting with Senator Lindsey Graham yesterday, with the Saudi ambassador the night before, other leaders, and we're trying to pray about, Lynn and I, how do we get back? At the moment, we've got meetings with our Joshua Fund board, our ministry to bless Israel and her neighbors. in the name of Jesus by investing in the church and strengthening the church and advancing the Great Commission, as well as caring for people who are suffering from war and terror. And so we're having board meetings here over the next few days and getting assessments from American leaders and regional leaders that work and live here, trying to understand, what's the next steps. But it is very encouraging, the direction where we're going. These are tectonic changes that are going on. The decapitation strike to take out Supreme Leader Ali Khamenei and his top 50 worst, most dangerous, bloodthirsty leadership inner circle. This is huge. I mean, it's hard to describe for people what a big deal this is. But just to be clear, Iran started this war 47 years ago, and not a single American president until now, until President Trump, has decided to finish it. So the idea that we should have waited for Iran to strike first. Oh, you mean when they took hostages 47 years ago, American hostages, when they killed 241 Marines in Beirut in 1983, and so on and so on and so on, when they started the October 7th war against Israel and our other allies. So that's just insane thinking on the left, and it's not even worth thinking about.
Yeah, and I totally agree with that, and I think that President Trump is right to do what he did. I'm personally in full support of what's ongoing, and I think that he is making calculated decisions that are in the best interests of America and the West overall. And yet those who oppose this would say, because there's so much talk about this going on for 47 years, then that undermines the messaging that this was somehow an imminent threat. But I don't see it that way, Joel. I mean, something can be going on for a really long time, and there still be an imminent threat of, yet another sort of offensive strike that you have to respond to in the moment. And so, yes, this has been going on 47 years. That just shows the track record that we need to take it seriously.
Absolutely. And I think what's getting missed here by those who frankly don't want to see it is the fact that what happened in the negotiations, right? President Trump didn't just wake up one morning and decide to attack Iran and finish the war after 47 years. He began a diplomatic process, right? First, last year, he gave Iran 60 days, make a serious, strong, verifiable agreement to get rid of all of your nuclear weapons program and your nuclear enrichment program, and then we'll be good and we won't have a war. They refused, and President Trump ordered those strikes to destroy Iran's nuclear weapons systems. But what happened this year, he engaged in diplomacy again. And what did we learn out of these diplomatic meetings? Steve Witkoff, the president's chief negotiator, said on Fox the other day that the Iranian negotiators were bragging to him, Steve, and Jared Kushner, that they had enough highly enriched uranium to build 11 nuclear warheads, and that was their beginning point. They weren't going to negotiate that away, but they might be willing to talk about other things. And when Witkoff and Jared Kushner looked at each other and then reported back to the president, that was a revelation. I don't think anybody in the U.S. government or in Israel knew that the Iranians still had enough highly enriched uranium to build 11 nuclear weapons. That showed us that last year's attack wasn't changing the course of this genocidal, apocalyptic, murderous regime, and that they had to be stopped. Like if you wait, if you wait until they pull the trigger, that trigger might involve a nuclear warhead. So you can't wait. And as the Iranians were building hundreds of ballistic missiles a month, you'd get to a point where there'd be too many missiles that could attack American interests, American bases, Israel, the Arab world, and you wouldn't be able to go in and successfully destroy Iran's offensive military capability. I think that President Trump has done the exact right thing at the exact right moment, and I give him credit for at least trying twice to get a diplomatic solution, because we actually learned a lot. And it shows Trump wasn't trying to just, change the conversation off of some political thing that he didn't want to talk about. Everybody knew this was coming. He warned the Congress. I was sitting in the State of the Union address in the House chamber when he laid out, look, this is where we are, and this is where we might have to go. Everybody knew this was coming, including Congress. And the idea that he didn't notify them is insane.
Yeah, I mean, he openly notified literally everybody who cared to watch. So, all of these things are just shallow tactics to try to undermine what he's doing and the real rationale for this. And yet, we see some of those on mainstream media who are suggesting that this is just a political tactic. I mean, I was even reading some of the headlines that were coming in this morning, and there was one, I think it was from The Economist. It's here that says, if his Iran war fails to pay off politically, will Donald Trump cut his losses or double down? And I'm going, that's not his calculation at all. I mean, this is not something where he's looking at the polls asking, will people support this or not? I mean, yes, Donald Trump does pay close attention to the polls, but he also is paying close attention to what's actually happening on the world stage. And more than, any other president in certainly my lifetime, he really understands that America first genuinely means America first. And that also means protecting our allies, and it means protecting the West and Western values. And I see, all of this, and his foreign policy has been shaped based on that ethic. And this is absolutely consistent with, what we should have expected from Donald Trump.
This is President Trump keeping his word to the American people that he would protect us, particularly from the genocidal Iranian regime. The president said that in his first term, and he took actions to move in that direction. He said that in the campaign in 24, and he's said it every day or almost every day over the last year, and now he's actually doing it. And the latest polling is actually very interesting. 85% of Republicans approve this action. This idea that there's a split in the MAGA base. Tucker Carlson and the others don't like it, but 85% of Republicans do like it. That's according to the CBS News poll. And overall, CBS News of all places, very interesting with the takeover about Barry Weiss, a conservative. Their newest poll shows that overall, 76% of the American people support military action against Iran as long as it only lasts a number of weeks. If it goes on for years, the number drops down to 13%. But right now we're at 76%. Now, I'm not saying this is popular, like people wanted it to happen. But the president told us that he's going to make America great again. You can't be great if there's a regime for 47 years attacking you, declaring death to America, death to America, death to America, has killed more Americans, maimed and murdered and wounded more Americans since the Vietnam War. That's Iran. And now they were on the race to build 11 nuclear bombs and the missiles to deliver them. Only an insane left-wing lunatic in the American political sphere or Tucker Carlson and Candace Owens,
isn't that the same thing?
Not protect us from this.
Yeah, and and it's a couple of loud voices on the right. It's certainly not the base. It's certainly not, kind of this mainstream. And this is the frustration with kind of the rise of alternative media, is that you get a lot of noise and chatter that has been mistaken for actually representing a certain segment or demographic of audience that then turns into constituency. And I don't think that that's accurate just because somebody like a Tucker Carlson has a really loud voice. And we've expected that from outlets on the left for a long time, but this is where I've consistently said, Joel Rosenberg, this is why people on the right and Christian conservatives in particular have an obligation to have discernment. And just because someone claims to be on our side doesn't necessarily mean that the opinions they voice are genuinely conservative or biblical. And and so speaking of some of these ridiculous headlines, I wanted to get your take on this as well, because just speaking of undermining, and this isn't coming from Tucker, but it's coming from Huffington Post, which maybe is as ridiculous as Tucker Carlson is these days. But the but the headline is, some U.S. military commanders have reportedly been accused of telling their troops the Iran war is part of a biblical plan to trigger the end times. And I just sat there, Joel, and was like, this is ridiculous. And it's such a shallow attempt to cast Christians in a bad light, because anyone who actually believes Revelation is an accurate description of the end times, as I do, also knows that we don't know the day or the hour of Christ coming, much less have the ability to trigger it. I mean, this is just trying to make Christians look stupid.
Well, I would make a distinguishing point here, which is I believe we are watching prophecy unfold, but I can't imagine a single commander in the United States military saying that to their troops. The American forces are so brave. They're so well trained. They're so well led, and they're winning. They are winning a war that we should have fought years ago against a regime that hates us and chants death to America every single day of the year. But the idea that American commanders are teaching Bible prophecy, that's insane. That's not happening, and this is fake news. But I will say, and unashamedly, we're watching Bible prophecy play out, and we are living in the last days, and the rebirth of Israel was a prophetic event in 1948. And we're gonna mark several dates that are hugely consequential. Obviously, the fall of the pro-American, pro-Israel, pro-Western Shah of Iran in January of 1979, that was a big deal. The rise of the Ayatollah Khomeini on February 1st, 1979, that was a big deal. November 4th, 1979, when Iran took over the U.S. Embassy and held our hostages for 444 days, humiliating days. That was a big moment in Middle East history. The murder of 241 Marines in October of 1983, that was a big moment. And October 7th was a big moment, among others. But February 28th, 2026 is going to go down. People aren't using the date yet, but they will. February 28th was the day that the Wicked Witch of the West died, and that the supreme leader, Ali Khamenei, was decapitated along with his entire inner circle. This was one of the biggest moments in geopolitical history led by President Trump. But I believe it's also prophetic history. Jeremiah 49, the last verses of Jeremiah 49 talk about that God is going to get so angry with the Iranian regime in the last days that he's going to destroy the king and his princes. That's a very interesting moment. That has not happened. We haven't seen the death of a leader in Iran. I can't even tell you when. I think you'd have to go back to the 1950s. This is a big deal. And what that Bible prophecy talks about is that Iran is going to be transformed from a wicked regime into a nation blessed by God. Now, we're in the early stages, and I don't expect all or maybe any of your listeners to even be aware of Jeremiah 49, much less believe it. But I'd encourage them to read it, to process it, especially if they're Christians, and say, Lord, are we moving into some interesting moments? It's not wrong for pastors, preachers, or even people like you and me to talk about Bible prophecy and assess where we are. Jesus criticizes his followers when they can't understand the significance of the times that they're living in. But U.S. commanders shouldn't do it, and I doubt that they have.
Mm-hmm. And such a great distinction, Joel Rosenberg, between, the Christian view that obviously we are looking at current events and we are, with every day that passes, it's just a fact that we are closer to the return of Christ and the end of all things, because we are, one day further into world history and into the timeline. And so we are supposed to be looking at the signs of the times and all of those things. And that's distinct from suggesting that somehow how, these military commanders are purposefully trying to orchestrate their foreign policy strategy and their war strategy based on trying to trigger some kind of Armageddon or triggering the coming of Christ, the second coming, and the end of all things. And so I think, that kind of confusion in an article like HuffPost just shows why, so many of these mainstream media outlets who don't understand biblical theology, they don't understand prophecy, they don't understand any of this, and they're commenting on things that they don't understand, that just generates confusion. And we as Christians need to have more discernment. We need to rightfully divide truth from error. And we do need to be looking at this, because while, this isn't, and it may not be, these commanders and certainly, Donald Trump trying intentionally to trigger the end of all things, it is very possible that world events right now are coming together in ways that we can say, this is definitely getting closer. And so, what do you see? I mean, we've talked about biblical prophecy a lot, and the end of all things and Revelation and all of this. How do you see what's going on right now on the world stage in light of Scripture?
Well, I would start with, that's an interesting story, and I did see that headline. 2 Peter chapter 3, in verse 3, starts by saying, "Know this, first of all, that in the last days mockers will come with their mocking, following after their own lusts, and saying, 'Where is the promise of his coming?'" Jesus is coming. "For ever since the fathers fell asleep, all continued just as it was from the beginning of the creation." And then it goes on to explain why there are going to be people who don't understand it. They're going to mock it. They're going to think it's ridiculous, but that we're supposed to keep our eyes on the fact that Jesus is coming back, that he didn't tell us everything, every sign to watch for, but he gave us a list in Matthew 24, in Luke 21, and elsewhere in the Scriptures to give us a sense that, hey, when you see all these things, know that I'm near, that my hand is right at the door. And so I would say the rebirth of Israel in 1948 was one of the biggest, most dramatic sets of end times prophecies to come to pass in our, well, it was pre my lifetime, and Jews returning by the millions from exile back to the promised land. And then Jesus talked about, you'll see wars, rumors of wars, civil wars, insurrections, revolutions. You'll see the persecution of Christians and so forth. And you'll also see the spread of the gospel. And we see the spread of the gospel in Iran, for example. Millions of Iranians have left Islam over the last 47 years and come to faith in Jesus Christ. And these are all signs that we're getting closer, and we should live boldly and without shame.
Amen to that. Always be waiting and watching. What a great word, Joel Rosenberg. Thanks so much. And as always, you can reach me and my team, Jenna at afr.net.
The views and opinions expressed in this broadcast may not necessarily reflect those of the American Family Association or American Family Radio.
Faith, family, freedom. American Family Radio.